I always relate it to heartbeat, because in any organization, it's the heartbeat. It's the very center. If you ask anyone out there working, and you said, do you love what you're doing? And you would get yes, and you would get no. And then you ask them, would you do that if you weren't getting paid? About 90% would say no. In fact, probably 95% would say no. I need to have, get paid. I need to have a job with purpose and all of that. But if that payment part of it isn't clear, isn't transparent, isn't helping me move with my career goals, then I'm out. And so that's what payroll means to me. It's really about the heartbeat. It's the center of any organization.
Here's a pre-show scenario for you. Imagine you had to visit 6 different houses just to cook your dinner. One place has the pots and pans, one has the stove, another has the food. You get the idea. Sounds ridiculous, right? Well, the reality is most global businesses operate the same way, using 6 different tools and platforms just to pay their global workforce. But now there's one platform offering truly simple, truly global payroll. And that's today's sponsor. That's Deel. That's Deel. Deel's fully managed global payroll makes it possible to pay your entire team in over 100 countries and in over 200 currencies, all in one place. So whether you're an enterprise company, a small business, or something in between, Deel is built to meet your unique business needs. And with in-house customer success managers, local payroll experts, dedicated points of contact, and more, Deel's fully managed global payroll eliminates third-party handovers and provides unmatched compliance and flexibility. In fact, they'll help you track and flag the latest changes to payroll regulations before they even become an issue. And with 24/7 monitoring and best-in-class security protocols, your sensitive data is always protected. So are you ready to transform your global payroll system? If you are, click the link in the show notes to book a demo with Deel today. That's Deel. Hello and welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. My name is Nick Day. I am your host. I'm also the CEO at JGA Recruitment Group. We're a specialist global payroll recruiter. Now, what if payroll wasn't just about compliance, but actually became in the future that strategic powerhouse within your organization? Imagine if AI could really revolutionize the way that payroll operates. Maybe it could enhance accuracy, reduce fraud, empower your workforce. Sound exciting? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today, because I'm really excited because I'm joined by the brilliant Sheri Sullivan, who is EY's Global Payroll Operate Leader. Sheri has led the charge in transforming payroll operations for multinational organizations. She's blended her expertise in compliance frameworks with cutting-edge AI and other technological solutions as well. And today she's going to be sharing exactly how AI is reshaping payroll's future. We're not just going to be talking about AI today. We know everyone is talking about AI. We're going to be talking about change as well. The S-curve. What are the things that Sheri's really excited about that's going to be impacting the world of payroll? So from navigating global regulations to empowering employees through personalized experiences, we are in great hands. So without further ado, welcome Sheri to the Payroll Podcast. Super excited to have you on today's show.
Great. Thank you, Nick, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Super excited. We, of course, met face-to-face at Congress. We've been involved in AI panels and more. And it's always an educational journey for me when I get to speak with you about how the world is moving. I think I'm on the, right on the cusp of cutting edge of what's happening when I speak to you, and you change all my thinking all over again. So super excited to be able to delve into your wisdom today. But before we do, I'm going to ask my first question, which I ask all of my guests, which is this: what does the word payroll mean to you?
Well, payroll, you may have heard me say this before, Nick, but I always relate it to heartbeat, because in any organization, it's the heartbeat. It's the very center. If you think about it, and certainly it's self-serving because I'm a payroll specialist, but also if you ask anyone out there working and you said, do you love what you're doing? And you would get yes, and you would get no. And then you ask them, especially the people who love what they're doing and they have a purpose and they're doing all that, say, great, would you do that if you weren't getting paid? About 90% would say no. In fact, probably 95% would say no. I need to have, get paid. I need to have a job with purpose and all of that. But if that payment part of it isn't clear, isn't transparent, isn't helping me move with my career goals, then I'm out. And so that's what payroll means to me. It's really about the heartbeat. It's the center of any organization. It's what we as employees rely on for our livelihood, right? Regardless of what type of job we have. So that's what payroll means to me. It also means transformation. You've heard me say before that I think payroll is the last frontier of disruption within an organizational back office. I think we had the finance disruption that happened, 20 years ago. We had HR disruption that happened 15 years ago with all of the new HCMs and all of those things. And payroll sits in between those. And it's just been there. There have been small jumps of disruption. And now I think what we've seen over the last couple of years are quantum leaps. And quite frankly, I think this next 18 months is going to change the face of everything we do in payroll. So it's super exciting.
Well, I certainly agree with you on that. And interestingly, for those that may be not as familiar with who you are and the work that you do, I would imagine, well, I would suggest that you are one of the people that are leading that charge as well. And it's phenomenal how much change we've seen in the last 24 months alone. And I've been in this industry for 20 years, and I've never seen so much change, so much advancement, and so much disruption. Before we jump into all of that, because we've got some exciting developments and evolutions that I'm sure we're going to get into as well. Tell the listeners a little bit about your journey. Where did it all begin for you?
For me, okay, so that's interesting. So, it began with a conversation I had with Tom Golisano, who was the founder, CEO, chairman of the board of Paychex, which is a domestic US kind of provider. And at the time, I had accepted a project to come in and actually do research to find out what the payroll international market looked like, and was there an opportunity for them to take this US centric business around the globe. And so that's how the payroll journey began with me. My background is really around analytics, around statistics, around international business. And I didn't really know much about payroll at all. Of course, that was 23 years ago. And I remember something, Nick. He told me, once you get in payroll, you'll never get out. And I remember I was like, oh, yeah, sure. I'll do this for 3 or 4 years. It'll be an interesting project. And then I'll go on. And here I am. I'm still involved with payroll. And that's because I love it. It's ever changing, super complex. The international part and relevancy of it is really key. And in fact, I think if you went and talked with anybody who's servicing multinationals, they would tell you that the market for consolidation, for transformation has never been hotter, which is really interesting to see, because the first multi-country kind of payroll philosophy, products, thoughts, and all of that were 2008. So that is a long time ago. And yet what you're seeing is now, because of the talent shortage, people, need to change. They have antiquated in-house systems. They can't find and train the right kind of people. And because of the nature of how our multinational businesses are growing, and there's a need for constant change, for visibility, for metrics, for all of that, people are saying, wow, this is really the heartbeat. And I need to know what's going on. I need to have it connected to all my systems. I need it automated. I need visibility, et cetera. So that to me is pretty surprising.
For sure. I love the way you said that. The individual, sorry, I can't remember the name, but I'm sure you'll remind me, where he said you'll never get out. I think we can change it now. You'll never want to get out, right? I mean, funnily enough, you started in 2023, 2000 and, I think you said 23 years ago. It was 23 years ago for me this year as well. And then you mentioned 2008. That's the year we launched JJ Recruitment, the payroll recruitment specialist. And, we've seen the changes through a slightly different lens. We see it through the talent space lens. And I couldn't agree more. There is a talent shortage, and that's because of the rapid evolution that the profession has undertaken and gone through. And you mentioned at the start, it's the heartbeat. Couldn't agree more. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people, ringing a bell for that listen to this as well. But you also said it's about transformation. I find that interesting. I'm in agreement with you, by the way. But I say that because payroll is often seen as just being a transactional enterprise. But we've seen AI start to change the perception of not just AI, but that's certainly had a big part to play in it. Technology, shall I say, start to change the perception of whether payroll is seen now as transactional, or whether it really can be truly transformational. I know in all the work that I've read and heard and seen you be involved in, you've always talked about payroll as being that strategic asset for organizations. So I want to dive into some of that. Tell me a little bit more about why you see payroll that way and how we can hopefully get others to see it the same way too.
Yeah, sure. Well, if you look across the world and you look at any enterprise, multinational enterprise, their number one cost is usually people. It could be number two on highly capitalized type of industries, but overall it's number one, right? And so if you think, well, my people are my number one cost, my number one asset, and what do I do? Then you have to think about, well, who's monitoring all of the data that comes with your people. And often you say, well, of course, it's my HCM, it's my human resources. But actually, that's not the case, right? Because if you think about payroll, think about his heartbeat. We get information from HR, we get information from operations, we get information from finance. We have all of that data here. And now, if you think about from a company perspective, I now need to make some strategic decisions around my workforce, around where, around how, and the ways of working are just changing dramatically. So now it used to be that you have normal employees, you have contractors, you have mobile employees like expats. Now you have all different types of other things, right? Now you have normal, you have contract workers, you have expats, now you have business travelers, as that's increasing, right? We had this time during COVID where it stopped, and now it's actually past pre-pandemic volumes, right? So you have those. Now you have gig now workers, you have different types of laws around all of that. And so if you think about it, how as as an organization and as a leader really understand this key asset, which is my people, and how do I have all the data around there so I can figure out how am I leveraging them, what are the how much are they costing, what are the hours overall, how do those relate to product, how do those relate to productivity. And what's interesting is as AI comes up, we're going to be using robots more and more. You don't think that every government is not going to look at those robots as a type of employee type, right? They will. And there will be taxations and aspects around those as well. So it kind of, if you think about where is all that data, where is it all up to date, and how does it actually link across the organization to create value? Payroll is really it. So that's my take on payroll. That's why I see it as so strategic.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, you started off with the perception that it's typically the most expensive function within an organization. I want to reflect on that just for a moment because you're absolutely right. And that's why I think, if we can change the perception for people to realize that how much of an impact, therefore, it can have, because one cost saving, one little bit of identification of where you can improve an employee experience or something on those lines can have a compounding effect across that whole organization. So it's not just the department that pays out, it's actually the organization that has so much access to data and strategic insight. One small shift can actually completely change the way the operations of that company. And I think you highlighted that really, really well. I think the second thing you highlighted brilliantly was the change towards employee experience, the ability to utilize the data and the way that we manage our payroll process globally to enhance that employee experience. And why is that important? Because in my space, clients' biggest challenge right now is getting top talent into their business and then keeping them there. And we know in some of the studies that we've looked at, if a pay slip is incorrect, there's a 30% chance that employees will start to consider a new employer. If it's incorrect twice in the same annual period, that goes up to 70%. So that's the impact payroll can have on maintaining that top talent in an organization. So I think it's a fundamental conversation that we need to be having. I'm delighted we are having it. But of course, the complexities around payroll are often also misunderstood from those outside of global payroll. So there's a lot of complex global payroll regulations. People can find that daunting. What are some of the things you're doing at EY in terms of your AI capability or some of the technological things that you're doing that's helping manage that complexity more efficiently for your clients that you're working with?
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that we're doing, you might remember that we were the first to market to actually work with Microsoft from an AI chatbot around payroll,
Yes.
right? And
Fantastic
so what
study,
we're
by the way, and some
doing,
great outputs from that. I remember reading the
yeah,
stats. Brilliant.
yeah,
Yeah.
really, really fun. And it doesn't mean that, on the internet you can go out, you can ask all kinds of compliance questions, but at the end of the day, as a payroll professional, you need to make sure that it's actually vetted, it's correct, it's up to date, it has the right response. And so what we've done, one of the items is around our compliance aspect, is we've captured all of that around the world. We have teams in 158 countries. They're all keeping up to date with all those regulations, and then they're actually feeding it to this bot. And we use the bot internally and externally, right? Internally, it actually is used, I don't know if you know this, for anybody within our EY construct from a taxation perspective to actually be able to look and do research on it. Okay. And it has, of course, all the links and other things that you would need to look at, but it's also been vetted. That means that in typical EY fashion, we've looked at the regulation, had people review it, understand it, make sure that we understand how it's interpreted, and then given that to the bot. So that's one thing that's really, really interesting. I think another thing I would say is Copilot. And I don't know if do you have Copilot, Nick?
Yeah, I'm a big AI adopter. I'm with Copilot, Claude, ChatGPT, Text Cortex. You know, I've got them all. They're all for different jobs for me. They all have their different sort of areas of specialization. But yeah, it's a lifesaver if you know how to utilize it well, for sure.
Yeah, it completely is. And so we have rolled out Copilot to many, if not all, of our team members around the globe. We're using it actively within our processes to actually serve clients. And I think if I'm a Copilot user for the last year and a half, and I start my day, and the first thing I say to Copilot is, okay, last night I had all of these ready for my day. What else do I need for today? What else has changed on my calendar? Link me quickly to any reference documents, etc. So it actually helps on those simple things. But from a payroll perspective, it can actually help our teams be much more productive around responding to clients, around making sure their to-do lists are followed up with, all of those type of things. So that's a real game changer. Next is around analytics. We talked about that. And if you remember, we've been playing around and we've launched 2.5, 3 years ago, our Smart Agent, which was first gen of the Gen AI around analytics across the data model. But what's really cool about this is that we used to think that data model, you had to map things into your data model. Now you don't need to with AI. You can have agents actually look through different data models that are within the organization and actually connect them together to make analysis, to provide reports real time on natural language or in any language that you want to. So, what that enables, Nick, is I think we still have clients that have their 41 reports for a certain country. I'm convinced always they only look at 3 of them, but they're druthers. They can do whatever. But I think what this AI component allows you to do is real time to ask the machine while you're having senior level conversations around a hypothesis to be able to dig the data up and actually show it on screen real time in different type of formats as you're having that conversation with a group of people. Okay. So let's say that you are thinking about rolling out a new benefit, right? And so you're in your meeting, you may have your senior VP of Comp and Ben, your HR Shared Services, you're in there from a global payroll perspective. And all of a sudden they're saying, usually the conversation goes, we've made the decision. Here you have to go. Okay, payroll, go implement it. But let's say that you've actually handled your governance correctly and you're having monthly updates around what are the things that are upcoming problems or challenges that the group is trying to solve from a corporation perspective. And they're talking about the fact that they're thinking about this new benefit. And so that's part of that conversation. You're realizing, well, what's actually the demographics as to how many people would actually take advantage of this benefit? Well, within the utility I'm talking about, you can literally pull it up and say, okay, how many people do we have across the organization that has been off of maternity leave per country and per legal entity? And then how has that trended over the last 3 years? And then if we add some data around the forecast from the EU, what does that look like it's going to be, for example? And so you could actually understand, well, actually birth rates are dropping or raising in certain geographic. This benefit would likely be used by X percentage, and here's the real value. You can actually do that as fast as I just said, maybe a little bit longer because you're going to look at the screen, right? But you could actually say, and you could easily make a decision then, what are the other questions that we have? And one of the things I love about EY, Nick, when I joined EY, I felt like I should have been here for years because I've only been here for 8 years, but I felt like I should have been here before because one of their philosophies is ask better questions. And I really love that. And so if you think about how do you what this facility does is it actually enables that data to be available across different databases that agents are actually pulling together to allow you in natural language to ask questions and then even ask deeper questions and really to drill into the data to actually make quick decisions. Like, for instance, the example that I'm talking about right now, you could quickly make a decision based on that. Should we spend any more time on this? or is that not going to add any value, right? The other thing that we're just beginning to do with analytics that we haven't done enough of is actually release certain questions and really train the AI so that it actually proactively brings to you trending and things that it's seeing, right? So we're certainly playing around with how does that work right now. Right now, most of AI is we ask, it gives, right? We ask, it gives. So it's kind of that type of it will provide back to us what we're asking. But if you think about the next evolution is that it's actually looking at trending, and it can, as you know, the technology can do so many algorithms, so many more than we can instantaneously across all kinds of data sets to actually be able to say, here are some things I'm seeing. And I think there's one other thing I would say with that, and also to identify fraud, to identify leakage. We had a client that hadn't looked at depth into a lot of the items around their hours. And actually, we were able to do that as part of an implementation. We were looking and we were doing a bunch of testing, and we realized with the data sets that something funny was going on. And it ended up that they were having some items, I wouldn't say that they're fraud, but just some items that were going on in one particular country that were massive, had a massive impact. And they had never been able to identify that, not because people weren't doing their job. They were absolutely doing their job. But in order to see it, you had to have a bigger data set, and you had to look back and see the trending and see the business items and changes with that trending to identify, wait a second, something strange happened here. So anyway, so those are things that we're doing and we're seeing with analytics. The last thing I would say is around workflows and removal of all different types of manual manipulations. As you know, I mean, Global Payroll really well, Nick, and this whole idea of one-touch payroll we've been talking about is the S curve, and we've been saying, look, it's coming, and it's really difficult though, because you need the governments in the countries to actually elevate themselves and get onto this automated aspect as well, so you can actually complete the end-to-end chain, so everything's automated. But do you know that at least at our teams, we have several of our teams, if not most of them are going toward it, but we have many that are already one touch, which means that the only thing they're doing is they're looking at deviations that come off the system and solving those. That's it. So that's pretty powerful. If you think about from that perspective, I'm really thinking that payroll is really about compliance. It's about advice. It's about trending. It's about data, and it's about connectivity of all of that good data. And I think and compliance, meaning you're making sure the gross to net is done well. But I don't think it's around the normal things, which are get all the inputs, put them into the system, then run the payroll, and then get the outputs. The outputs, I mean, the 7 standard outputs are standard. They should be, they're going, but it's really about the controller aspect of that and actually helping solve issues. So I don't know if that's what you're seeing with other clients.
You know what? You've given, for anyone who, I guess, who's listening to this that have doubts about the power of AI and how it can improve the payroll experience, the payroll process, I think you've just written off about 7 different fantastic examples of how it can benefit, right? And of course, EY has bigger resources than perhaps some organizations do, but I'd also argue that, for those that are fearful of it, EY very clearly, and with you as well, are leaning into the fear. Because when you lean into the fear, that's where you find the potential of what you can do. And you've highlighted there that, it's fantastic for fraud prevention, for anomaly detection, for understanding benefits utilization across global workforces, understanding your data, which is key to everything. And what I think is really interesting in the example you gave there was it allows us to look at things in a way that goes beyond our own thinking. Right. So one great way that I use AI often is to say, look, I've thought about this challenge in the way that I'm looking at it with these questions. What are the questions I'm not asking that I should be? And it'll come up with 10. I think, yeah, you know what? At least 6 of those I've never considered. It allows us to think laterally with a problem, and it will help obviously deliver those solutions as well. So, if you're really new to AI and you're not sure how to best utilize it, maybe that's a great place to start. Start with Copilot. What are your challenges? Feed them into the AI. Start thinking about what you think the solution is and asking AI to challenge you. And it does challenge our thinking. It does give us new solutions. Now, of course, with all of the things you mentioned there, that one-touch payroll dream that we've been talking about for decades in the world of payroll, with that does come another element of fear. And that fear, of course, is if AI is doing all this fantastic work, Where does it leave the humble payroll professional? Now, from my perspective, without wanting to lead you in any particular direction on this, although I suspect we probably see the industry in a similar way, from the optics I have in recruitment, we're getting less and less payroll administration, payroll officer type positions given to us as an agency to support and recruit for. And I understand why. A, because technology's got better in the world of recruitment, that those people can be found more easily, more direct, than always needing the services of a specialist. But number two, it's not the way organizations are evolving. However, where we're now getting involved is supporting clients with roles such as integration specialists, data specialists, looking at how we can really get into the data to utilize it in more creative and impressive and productive and profitable ways. So I'm really excited because it's creating this plethora of new industry roles in the world of payroll that's just making payroll incredibly exciting. But how do you see it? How would you answer that question for someone who's listening to this with that level of fear about the future? Hello, global payroll leaders. Are you facing challenges in finding the right payroll talent for your team? If you are, I hear you, and I'm here to offer you a solution. Because at JGA Payroll Recruitment, we're experts at sourcing, attracting, and engaging with top-tier global payroll talent that really drives business success. So don't let the frustration of finding great payroll professionals hold you back from raising the profile of payroll in your organization. The cost of a poor hire isn't just financial. It costs you time, or worse, it damages the reputation of your payroll operation. That's why we're 100% dedicated to ensuring your recruitment journey with us is nothing short of exceptional. Partner with us at JGA because we're an award-winning global payroll recruitment agency with a proven track record of success. We have over 100 five-star Google reviews, and we're trusted by many of the world's leading brands. And we would love to help you elevate your team with the best payroll talent available anywhere in the world. Reach out to us today at 01727 800 or 377 or visit us at jjrecruitment.com. And while you're at it, why not sign up to our weekly payroll newsletter for exclusive industry insights and job opportunities? With us, your perfect payroll opportunity or your perfect payroll hire awaits.
Yeah, well, I'm probably the wrong person to answer this because I've always realized that if we stand still, then we will become obsolete. If we continue to move forward and embrace, then we won't. And certainly, I don't think fear, it's more around moving forward with eyes wide open and understanding the risk, and also having faith that between the EU directive, right, that just went into effect in January around AI, that government bodies are looking at how do they protect us in a right way, in a balanced way around AI. So you have to trust that. I think obviously I work for a very conservative organization that's also looking at, are we using it ethically? Are we using it in the right way to add value? And what are the controls around it? And I think as a whole, it's extremely exciting. So I think, we're all driven by different internal mechanisms. And fear, by the way, Nick, I have a really good business coach who worked with me years ago, and he told me, fear is a natural instinct for all of us so that we could survive the caveman times. If we didn't have fear on something new, we would go out of our cave and like eat something and die, or, go around the corner and have, a large animal eat us, etc. So fear
Fear
was good.
enables creativity as well, because
Yes.
you have to come
Yes.
up with a creative solution. So it's a wonderful thing to have if we know how to
That's
harness it, for
That's
sure.
right. That's right. So I think it's about, you don't press forward without knowing that you're going to have to look at things holistically and maybe even writing down the things you're afraid of. But I think as a whole, if you do that, then you're able to kind of clear your mind and say, okay, how do I lean in to this thing that's happening? And what does that mean? And then how do I, as a payroll professional, still maintain the controls and the perimeters so that I can maintain and kind of have the boundaries so that fear doesn't take over, but that I use it constructively to help me from a boundaries perspective, right? I think that's what I would do. I think for me, I've always felt like if you're not moving forward, then you are becoming obsolete, as I said before. And I think that what is, and you've heard it, but I've seen it, is that if we aren't able to lean in and figure out how do we harness this new technology, someone else will, and our jobs will be obsolete instead of morphing us into the next best version of ourselves, which is about the growth mindset and what we all need to be doing, right? And so I think when I think about payroll specialists and the people that we're hiring, obviously we hire because we're EY, really strong regulatory compliance knowledge and backgrounds, right? We also hire based on aptitude for growth, right? Growth mindset. We also train then around stakeholder management. So we talked about how payroll ends up being at the end of the line when decisions are made. Stakeholder management means that you actually take the power and move yourself up the chain. So you're actually part of managing the stakeholders so they understand the value you're bringing, the importance that you're involved up front proactively with decisions that people are thinking about, not that they've made. The other thing is around AI and technology and how do you harness it? And the thing I love about where we are now, Nick, is that I can actually use the tools and I don't know how to do a Python script or anything, right? And I can actually utilize them in a way to automate functions right away, right? I can use the analytics tools that are available in natural language for myself. I don't need a specialist to do that for me. So what it does is, if you think about this, payroll can't be static, and obviously companies aren't static. They're changing countries, they're changing employee types, they're adding different benefits, they're having all types of change. But even then, we can't be static to say we're just going to pay people accurately and timely, even though that's tremendously difficult, right? We need to be thinking then, what's that next value I'm going to add to the organization? What's that next value I'm going to add? How else are we going to connect? What does that look like? And I think that that's pretty exciting. So I think if you lean into it, and also I think the other thing is education. Education helps too. Like I mentioned, the EU Act. I mean, hopefully everyone listening to the podcast knows about that. If they don't, go look it up. It's really serious. It has a ton of great controls. I know at EY, everyone had to go through it. I had to, and my team had to go through that act to understand, because we're using AI in our products, right? But there are lots of bodies out there that are really looking at how do they control and how do they actually harness this great assets that are being developed, but in a safe way. And I think if we just educate ourselves, then fear kind of flies out the
I agree. I think you mentioned the word education. It's something I would have highlighted myself, because without education, that's what this podcast does. This is what educates our audience to say, hey, this is a podcast you need to listen to if you want to get ahead in AI. Sheri's gone through this journey, and you talked about Python. Funny enough, I went through a Python course thinking that's what I needed to do. As a CEO of a recruitment business, I thought I needed to understand Python. I learned Python for beginners, and just to make everyone, give everyone a bit of reassurance, you don't need to. I mean, there's some time of my life I won't get back. I can assure you, I have a better understanding of what Python is. I now realize I don't need that expertise. And you don't, right? It's about educating ourselves on the right journey, looking at people that are leading the way, leading the charge, like yourself, and then learning from that and understanding where we need to go to upskill ourselves. But education is crucial. And hopefully this podcast plays a small part in that process for those that are listening. I want to take it, maybe this takes it away from AI, maybe it doesn't. But not everything is AI related. And I want to know from your perspective what you see as being the next S curve. What are the changes in payroll that are really getting you excited right now? Because for a lot of this AI stuff, it's old hat, right? I've been doing this for a very long time. So what are the things that are keeping you excited about the world of payroll?
For it's true, AI is old hat. Well, at least we've been playing around with it, doing a lot of things. I think we're really excited in that. I mentioned AI use case. I just want to mention one more before I answer your question, is that we're now working to, how does AI proactively look at data coming into payroll and identify immediately, is it correct, is it not correct, and then what are the correct, and making suggestions as to the correction. So think about that one touch thing. It all starts with the beginning input. I think as far as S curves, so let's talk about S curves. What we've done a ton of research, and I'm just so grateful to be part of EY because we have access to just brilliant minds and people who question us a lot and help guide us through. So we're always looking for what's that next S curve and how do we get ready for it? And how do we test it? And so the next S curve that we've seen is an emergence of the integration, okay, of how we pay people, and not just siloed I do payroll, I do mobility, I do business travelers, I do gig now workforce, I do contract workforce, but really bringing together things from an end-to-end perspective so that we help clients break down the silos, and that we also are breaking down the silos and really seeing the workforce as one. Okay. Now, granted, they all have different regulations that go with them, right? But kind of anyone that is paid for what they're doing or compensated in some way for what they're doing or taxed in what they're doing, like I used a robot scenario, then what we see as the next S curve is how do you have a solution that's flexible, it's connected, it's centralized, it has all the tools and visibility that really address any type of workforce that you have. And what's interesting about that, by the way, this also includes labor law. Okay. And what's interesting is we had this philosophy and hypothesis that that was an SS curve. And so what do you do after you have a hypothesis that that may be the S curve? You look for data points that actually connect you to that is the S curve. And then what you probably do as well, or at least we do, is we go out and we do research. Okay. And so we are blessed that we do a lot of research with, we have an internal research group and they use Oxford research to do a bunch of stuff. And so with this idea of the integrated solution, global payroll solution, so it's everything together, we had this hypothesis around it. So we asked Oxford to actually go out and do research on that. And what I can tell you is they researched 400 CHROs. Of that, 100% came back and actually said that evolution makes perfect sense to them, and there would be tremendous value in combining all of those things, whether it's payroll, mobility, business travelers, labor law, all of that into one
Wow,
offering.
100%. That's
And
impressive.
that was crazy. Yeah, I thought they made a mistake. I've done lots of research. I'm like, wait, something's wrong. There's never 100%.
So did this
But
link to the EY solution, which I've seen, that is IGPS,
yeah,
the Integrated Global Payroll Solution? So is that what we're talking about here in terms of your evolution
yes.
following that finding?
Yes, it is. And I guess what is that? That's taking all these solutions that EY has, but also that companies have, and really combining it to one solution. So you have, one data model, of course, across. You have one employee experience. You have one tech stack. You have one way of servicing. You have one set of data and analytics. Obviously, you can break it down if you want to, but I don't know anyone out there, Nick, that is a CHRO, a senior VP of Comp and Ben, HR shared services leader, a finance shared services leader that can pull up one report that says, what are the different types of employees I have and what are the totals and how much am I paying for all of them, right? We tend to look at domestic payroll within that country. We may look at domestic across countries or across the world, but think about looking at that with domestic payrolls across the world, mobile employees from expat perspective across the world, the business travelers and what's trending with that, the gig now, the labor law across all of that. Well, that's what IGPS is. And that led us to this research led us to actually launch that product. And I think what clients are expecting from that is cost savings, because when you combine it all together, they're expecting data sharing synergies. And we talked about the data. They're expecting productivity enhancements for their teams so that they can now break down silos and actually not have all these separate specialist teams, but actually everybody working together, which if you think about from a talent perspective, now you get to learn more and more different jobs, different tasks, different competencies if you're an employee, right? And we all want to do that. Also, enhanced compliance. They really thought that enhanced compliance would be really important with that. So I thought that was pretty interesting that we did. I think there's one other thing that I will share with you in the research that was shocking to me. We asked companies how satisfied they were with their payroll, with their mobility, with their labor law services. And on average, just 21% of organizations were satisfied with their current service providers across those parts, which to me was super shocking because, if you think about mobility, there's some really great vendors out there, and it's a pretty defined and advanced and mature market. Payroll, we all know where it is, and granted, the movement toward multi-country is continuing to grow, which is really fun. After all these years, it's picking up steam, but still, I would think the satisfaction was higher for that, and labor law as well. So it was pretty interesting to see that not only do they see combining all of these things together in one offering will add tremendous value to them, but they were actually dissatisfied with the current kind of siloed solutions they have now. So that's pretty interesting.
Well, I want to open the payroll vault in just a moment, but the two reflections on that response I'd just like to delve into, I guess. The first is, which I really love, which I've been talking about quite a lot on this show and really championing for, which is in order for payroll to be seen as a more strategic enterprise, to be seen as that heartbeat and respected as the heartbeat with organizations in the words that you would use, we need to break out of our silos. And that's going to involve more collaboration with HR, with finance, with global mobility, and any other function that may be close to IT even. And yet there seems to be, or there seemed to have been a reticence to do that. And actually, I think AI is helping bring those departments together a little bit more. I think that collaborative piece is ultimately what people want, and it's going to really help elevate the payroll professional. And I think it's been difficult for them to find their voice when they are so siloed. So I think that's a really interesting innovation at EY that you brought those things together, because that's obviously going to help raise the profile of payroll within that collaboration as well. So I think that's really, really exciting. I think the second point I wanted to make, which I thought was quite interesting in your observations, is with evolution in payroll then isn't just about AI. It's about evolving the way that we think about payroll, where we can derive our value from payroll. And I think that's really important. A lot of people think the only way we can evolve things is by utilizing tools. And that's what AI are. It's just tools to help us do things better. But actually, we need a more of a holistic view. We need to think broader than just technology and actually think about our employees. And that survey, I think you said it was 21%. Is that right? Were satisfied. But I would ask you the question then, does that mean that some of the vendors and suppliers, and I'm talking about all vendors and suppliers here, not pulling them out individually, are maybe a little bit behind? Maybe they are burying their heads in the sand a little bit, in the sense that this used to work. What got us here, though, may not get us there, because as technology has evolved and our thinking is evolving, are the demands of those client groups and employees evolving at a quicker rate than potentially the vendors are responding? I don't know, but it would be interesting to get your view based on those statistics.
I think so. I think so, Nick. I think it's very good insight. And I would say for EY as well, we're constantly looking and saying, what do we need to improve? How do we move? How do we move faster? How do we leverage and grab these tools and actually change the whole interaction with our company, with the administrators, with the different users that we have across that whole employee life cycle, but also with employees too. I mean, as well, I think that what was really cool about payroll is we started out, we were a little bit behind the S curve. Then we quickly caught up. Then there was a next movement. We were a little bit behind from a multinational perspective. Then we caught up. And now I think we're seeing the next part of it. And so I think from a vendor perspective, change is hard. It's also hard because you're trying to also figure out, well, you already have some good tools and systems. They are highly used, they're distributed, you have a bunch of clients on them, etc. Clients are expecting us to continue to move forward with zero cost to them and just add the next evolution and innovation around technology. And that's costly. It's hard. Change management is hard. All of those things. We kind of see it a little bit with SAP, right? They're moving everyone to S/4HANA, right? That's a process that's going on. So bravo to them. But that has been being talked about for many, many years. It's really hard to do. So I think as a vendor community, it's how do you really lean in and continue to really challenge your tool set and how do you move forward? I think the other thing, Nick, and I'm saying this because it's what we're doing too, is really how do you also construct and really use and build your tools in a way that allows for faster iterations, development, releases, and innovations, which is super difficult because on one hand, you need a very stable environment and tools. This is payroll after all. It never quits, right? People over holidays, it was funny. EY does a shutdown in some areas for several weeks. And yet my teams around the globe are working. And someone at EY said, your teams are working. I'm like, this is payroll.
That's
We work
payroll.
all the
Yeah,
time.
that's
Right?
payroll.
So I think you need something super stable. But at the same time, you need to figure out how do I actually leverage all these new tools, technology, systems that are out there to create more dynamic systems so that I can update them faster. I can add features easier. I can really address the client's needs from an employee and an employer perspective. So I think we're all in that boat, Nick, as to what's that next movement. How do we move forward? And it's not easy. It's not easy because we have great systems and tools that we've used, and they're stable and they're doing their job. But I think what we will see, we're already seeing it, Nick, a little bit with AI in general. AI, there's a bunch of studies about AI and that it can actually write code for you.
Oh, yeah.
You know
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
right? All
I've
of
used
that.
it, I used it in my Python course to create Python code for me. So, yeah, for sure.
There you go. So I think, or even to dissect what is the code, right? You can push code in there and it will tell you all about it. It will give you the
And where the
requirements, all
errors
that
are.
stuff.
And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think we're really at a precipice. We see this next S curve coming, but we're also at a precipice as organization and vendors around the globe as to how do we actually embrace that to actually take what we already have built that's really good to that next level. And what does that look like? Because all of us are afraid. Talk about fear. The one thing every vendor, I think, is afraid of doing is throwing out their system and starting anew with a new system, because we've all had the experience in one form or other where those next systems don't necessarily perform as good as the old ones did, and you have a lot of rework that has to happen. So it'll be interesting to see, but I have confidence. Back to this fear conversation, I have confidence that this AI journey we're on will actually create tools to enable us to do that as well and keep up with all the different.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the message that's coming through loud and clear for me, and if any vendors listening to this, maybe you're one of the vendors involved in that study that said 21% looking to change. The key thing is never stand still. We've got to continue to evolve. EY are clearly doing that all the time, which has led to such significant success, whether it's through chatbots, whether it's through the global payroll operations that you provide to all of your clients. You're never, ever standing still. I say to my kids, right, it's like working with money. If you leave it in the bank account, not do anything with it, eventually it'll get eroded by inflation. You've got to be proactive. You've got to try and do something with it and make it grow. Otherwise, you're standing still. So really fascinating insight. Thank you ever so much for sharing with me. I'm going to open the payroll vault. So 3 short, sharp questions for you, Sheri. Here we go. So what's one piece of advice you'd give to payroll professionals who want to stay ahead of the curve in this fast evolving space?
So what I would say is get out there and educate yourself around AI, around stakeholder management, and around overall transformation that's going on within organizations so that you can understand your stakeholders, what's going to be important and what's changing and new. So that would be my one point of advice.
If you had the power to make one groundbreaking change in the global payroll industry, what would it be and why?
One groundbreaking change in the global payroll industry would be actually to, on the regulatory perspective, is to have all of the governments kind of embrace an electronic end-to-end filing system. I think that would really change, and notice system around regulations. I think that would really change the way that we work and develop tools, etc.
Fantastic. And actually, I think we've had a similar response in the past. So you're not alone in that thinking. I think maybe one day with AI, maybe it'll help us make that happen. We'll wait and see. My last piece is, if you could leave the podcast today with your final words of wisdom for those that listen who really want to embark on a fantastic and successful career in payroll, what would those words of wisdom be?
So they would be, payroll is a fantastic place to be. It's the heart of every organization. It's the last frontier of disruption. If you want a dynamic, fun, changing career, then we're the place to be. And I think the second thing is lean in, really lean into, put your fears on the side, be aware of what you're concerned about, but lean into innovations that are going on, to things vendors are changing, to the marketplace, to all this AI that we talked about, because I think it's a pretty exciting place to be. And I think that you can make a big difference.
Fantastic place to leave the show. Well, lean in. It's the last frontier of disruption. You heard it here first from Sheri Sullivan. Thank you ever so much for sharing your expertise today with me, Sheri, on the show. It's given us a great glimpse into the incredible future I think payroll has for everyone and the reasons why we need to be excited about it. I think your insights into AI's transformative potential in payroll, your passion for empowering payroll professionals. It's been nothing short of inspiring. So thank you ever so much for joining me today on the Payroll Podcast. Of course, if you are listening to the show and you want to find out more about EY's services, there will be links you can find directly in the show notes. You can find out more about the solution we talked about today, about their payroll solutions. I'll put in Sheri Sullivan's LinkedIn profile as well. So please do check out those links, and I'm sure you'll all know already if you're listening to this, but on EY's website, you can find a whole host of other resources you're going to find equally inspiring as well. So please do check those out. And of course, if you are listening to the show and you need support with a global payroll related vacancy, that's where me and my team can support you. We have offices in the USA, we have offices in the UK. You can reach us at jgarecruitment.com. So please do get in touch if you need support with a particularly challenging role, especially in the world of AI. It's getting more challenging, it's getting more complex. We are here to help. But as always, if you are a regular listener to this show, remember to subscribe it. Please to share it with all of your colleagues and friends. And together, we're going to really raise the profile of payroll globally. Sheri Sullivan, thank you ever so much. It's been an absolute inspirational pleasure. Thank you. This episode has been sponsored by Deal, the all-in-one global people platform that simplifies how you pay your global teams. Deal's fully managed global payroll makes it possible to pay your entire team in over 100 countries and in over 200 currencies, all in one place. So whether you're an enterprise business, a small company, or something in between, Deal is built to meet your unique business needs. With in-house customer success managers, local payroll experts, dedicated points of contact, and more, Deal's fully managed global payroll eliminates third-party handovers and instead provides unmatched compliance and flexibility. In fact, they'll help you track and flag the latest changes to payroll regulations before they even become an issue. And with 24/7 monitoring and best-in-class security protocols, your sensitive data is always protected. So are you ready to transform your global payroll system? If you are, click the link in the show notes today to book a demo with Deal. That's DEEL.